Hello everyone, this is Rutvik Mehta and today we have with us Sajid Chougle from Mumbai. Sajid is someone who's kind of lived the best of two worlds. He's a creative director at a children's product brand called Luma World, and he's also a professional skydiver and a base jumper. Now, for those of you who might not be aware, base jumping is jumping from fixed objects like cliffs, buildings, etc. using a parachute. So Sajid has been doing that for several years now across the globe until last year when the pandemic struck and obviously he, like everyone else, had to be confined to home. But he's back in the skies now, and we are going to chat with him about that, about how his lockdown experience was, and how his journey into skydiving came to be. So firstly, welcome Sajid. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Rutvik. I truly appreciate you guys having me here.
Right. So first up, Sajid, how does it feel to be back in the sky, jumping off objects again? I believe Uttarakhand was when you first hit the skies in late November. So how was that feeling for you after several months?
You know, as Leonardo da Vinci once mentioned, once you get a taste of the skies, you always long for them, right? It was
Right.
exactly like that. And I can vouch for that statement. So after 8 or 9 months of confinement, when I got the opportunity to get back in the skies for one of the paragliding events in Bilkhet, Uttarakhand, I jumped on it, and it was a beautiful feeling jumping off back from the skies.
Right. Now, you've obviously done this several times before in your life, but how different was this compared to all of your previous jumps? You're doing it after several months. There might be, some kind of unknown doing it after a long gap. Was that the feeling? How different was this from all your, multiple jumps before?
So, to be very honest, it's a game of like when you have these long duration breaks, right? You're always, as a jumper, you're always visualizing jump scenarios in your head. So you're
Right.
always up there. So it never leaves you. Basically, of course, there are certain aspects to look into when you're going for a new type of a jump. But then jumping off from paramotors or planes or mountains is something I was pretty used to almost every year, every few months, I would say. And the confidence level is there, so it never leaves you. And so I didn't feel out of place. Yeah.
Right. And then you told me previously about an incident with one of your drivers where you had to redo the entire jump. Could you talk us through that?
So that happened in Bilkhet, Uttarakhand. So it was a 4-day event, and I was planned to jump on day 3, day 4. On day 3, we took the paramotor up in the sky, and around 600 feet, the engine cut off. And I'm like, why did the sound stop suddenly? And then the pilot is like, hey, the engine just shut down. I'm like, can you restart it? Like, we're having a conversation while we are flying with no engine power, right? You're just gliding down. And he's like, I'm going to try to just hold on to the brakes, or to the control lines. Can you just press the ignition button? And I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm trying, nothing happening, and some technical glitch. Uh, from 600 feet, luckily, the guy was skilled enough. He glided back down without power and landed into like a decently tight space, I would say,
Mhm.
avoiding trees, avoiding tents that were pitched over there. The crowd was just like, waiting in silence, like what's going to happen, right? And
Yeah.
I had braced onto the frame of the paramotor saying, okay, if I go into the trees or into the tents, I don't want to fly off because I'm ahead and the first person who's going to fly off is me. So I just like braced myself, and luckily, touch wood, he landed safely. Kudos to him. So after that, I told him, look, please figure out your machine first. I don't want to do this in a rush.
Right.
uh, Anyways, what we're doing is like super extreme, so just take your time. And then day 4, he came back to me saying, hey, you know what, we found the issue, shouldn't be a problem, we've left the machine running for a while, it's okay, good to go. And day 4, we made the jump, which was really beautiful.
Nice. Oh man, there is some story. So, but Sahil, how much did you miss all of this in all these months? I mean, look, all of us missed living a normal life in the lockdown during the pandemic. But for you, living normal is being adventurous, right? So, how much did you miss all that adrenaline in all these months that you had to be at home?
So that's a very powerful question, to be honest. So the thing is, like, once you once you keep doing this, right, it becomes a part of you. It's so for me, it's not a bucket list or anything like that. It's a sort of a lifestyle that I live. So I mean, I handle my business on the side, and then every now and then I take out time to go and have experiential adventures. This is something I live for. Like, this is the legacy I would like to create also, when I'm hopefully, by the time I'm old. So if you ask me right now, I'm missing it. I mean, I miss it every day. I would like to be in the sky every bloody day. Like, maybe just go next morning, right? But then life is not that easy living in Bombay. So in fact, I'm traveling to Telangana today evening, so that I'll be jumping over there for the next 4 5 days. There's a paramotoring championship happening over there, and they've invited me as a demonstration jumper. So these opportunities now slowly, they're opening up, and I would say I'm slightly privileged being a civilian to keep doing it, keep living this way. It's a beautiful feeling. Like, I wouldn't have imagined, because in USA things are accessible. You have a skydiving center, drop zone, like 1 hour 2 hours from where you live. You just drive down, go jump over the weekend, whatever, or just go in the morning and go to work after that. But in India, it's challenging because multiple factors, regulated airspace, no access to infrastructure, etc., whatever reasons. But then me being able to do this every month, every 2 3 months, or whatever duration I get, it's like amazing.
Right. You mentioned USA. So for all of you who don't know, Sajid lived in USA before he came to India, but we'll get to that bit a bit later. For now, we are going to discuss your lockdown tales, which were so many that it's difficult to kind of put all of that in one, but we'll give it a shot. So firstly, you kind of shot a skydiving video at home, right? You were lying on the floor, you had those backgrounds, edits and everything. So what was the idea behind that? How did you execute that? And how long did it take to kind of pull all of this together?
So 2020 lockdown was insane for me. I mean, I feel bad for a lot of people, but then for me, sitting at home and having all this content sitting with me, and all these crazy ideas that I started getting around the content. Like, I'm like, okay, what do I make out of this? And there are quite a few videos. One is the stop motion video, which I shot on the floor. So I got the inspiration from another guy from Europe who made like a mountaineering, ice climbing video, a stop motion video. And I messaged, and that went pretty viral. So before it went viral, I messaged him. I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool. May I build upon this into skydiving or base jumping? He's like, yeah, just do it. Just use my hashtag inspired by Klein. And so that's how I made that video. My mom helped me because it's not a one-man job, to be honest. You'll go mad doing it by yourself. She helped me with like certain shots. I just put the GoPro onto the ceiling, and I would click pictures. I would use the remote on my phone and just take pictures in between. Yeah, so that video went pretty viral, and Nippon TV from Japan contacted me, and they're like, "Hey, this is really amazing." I first thought it's a fake email, but then I just like went through the email chain, and it was actually real. And I'm like, "Wow!" So they wanted another stop motion for one of their quirky Sunday primetime shows, and I'm like, "Okay, what idea?" They're like, "You suggest ideas." I'm like, "Okay, cool. We can do Mortal Kombat, or we can do more of skydiving or base jumping, whatever you want." They're like, no, skydiving, base jumping sounds okay, but like Mortal Kombat sounds nice. But in Japan, Street Fighter is bigger. So we did a whole fight sequence of Street Fighter. And that was also a big feat for me, considering we had to make costumes, and I had to do like for all the effects and all. I actually made paper cutouts and used that as for the stop motion. I used that as effects. So the
Wow.
video came out super nice. So I shot my bit in my flow on my hall floor. They shot their bit, like we mapped the frames. They
Hmm.
shot their bit in their studio flow, and then they combined the footage.
Brilliant.
It looks really cool. Yeah.
Great. So all this that you mentioned, you did these bunch of videos. Was there like a way to, let your creativity flow? Did you need an outlet sitting at home all these months, not having one, not having access to, you know, creativity? Was that a way to kind of let it all flow?
Yes, I do think so. It was because, like, I mean, that's part of my job. Also, I'm also the creative director for Luma World, which is my own company along with three other co-founders. But the whole idea is, no matter what I'm doing, wherever even if I'm sitting somewhere, I'm always observing things. I'm always observing nature, animals,
Right.
humans and trying to think, what different can you do with this, right? Or if I'm trying to tell a story
Hmm.
or pitch a product, how do you showcase it in a way that people connect with it?
Right. And looking at it from a macro level, how were the lockdown months for you personally? You're someone who's kind of used to being so free, just being out there, living a life freely. Did you feel like a sort of a caged bird where you couldn't venture out, couldn't do the things that you wanted to? And it was a pretty long period. So, how was that for you personally?
Uh, I mean, yeah, like there were moments where, because so usually June, July, I'm in Scandinavia, I'm in Norway and Sweden. That's where I go to train and do my jumps.
Right.
In fact, I work over there with the different base jumping organizations over there. I felt a bit limited, but then I just channelized that into, just using it for creating more and more content. I would say the other thing is because I live with two babies. One is 84 and one is 74. Uh, I have to. I mean, I had the responsibility to just ensure that they are safe and everything is taken care during COVID times also, and even now. So of course, taking all those precautions and just ensuring there's a positive mood inside the house, because my dad was also, he was always outside for his work and business and all that, and then suddenly everything came to a standstill. So I had to ensure that they are still sane inside their heads. So that's why I feel it wasn't bad. Yeah.
Right, and you spoke of the two babies. There's one video as well where you kind of come walk out from your room and you're in the hall. There's your dad sitting there. So, what did your parents think of you doing all these shenanigans while at home?
So okay, yeah. So they had no clue. So they still don't have clue how I edit my videos and what all I do. Of course, I show them the jumps. Whenever I come back from my trips and all, and their first reaction is like, "Oh my god!" But then they know I do it safely. In fact, my mom observes me when I pack my parachutes inside my house, and she's like, "Okay, what happens if you do this? What can go wrong? Blah blah blah." And so she has some level of confidence. Okay, this guy can do it safely, right? And that is important for me also, that the trust factor is there.
Right.
Otherwise she'll always be tensed, right? So with the content bit, I'm like, hey, we're going to try this experiment and there's an opportunity for these videos going viral, so be ready. And so I would just like use their help and just like, okay, you have to say this, you have to do this.
Right. Now, you say it wasn't all that bad, the lockdown, but we've been speaking to athletes across sports, and it's mentally very difficult to just sit in one room when you're so used to so much physical activity and that part of your life. So for you,
Yeah.
how difficult was it mentally, and how did you ensure that you remained in high spirits? Did you you obviously had all these creative things to do, but obviously there must be days where you felt like, oh, this has to stop and I need to get out. So how tough was that mentally, and how did you ensure you kind of wait through that?
I mean, yeah, of course, you always have that feeling. And I've been through this feeling long time back also. So when I moved from USA back in 2011, I came to Bombay. And for the next few years, until I had all the savings I got in dollars I got from USA, I would travel to Dubai and Thailand and jump, right? Like just train, get more experience. But then once the money started running out, the next few years, I had no clue what to do. So then I decided, okay, you know what? I think I should just maybe get a job, something that I'm interested in, and just started working on my skill sets, work front wise, so that I could save money and then hopefully make a bigger trip in the future and gain more experience at one go. And this is something I keep telling youngsters also, like if you want to get into aerial sports, because it's an
Hmm.
expensive activity, you
Hmm.
need some sort of a back, or you need some sort of a side job, side income to support you into these things. Otherwise it is very difficult if you're thinking this is going to be my profession from day one. It doesn't happen that way. So I was used to that, and then of course there are certain basic exercises I do at home just to keep myself active and all. Other than that, just observing what people around the world were doing. So I mean, the whole world was in standstill, right? So then, like, to be honest, I do. I if I say that, yeah, I was going and jumping, that would sound like being highly privileged and not caring about anyone else, right? So everyone just took a break. Everyone just reassessed what they want to do. But then that whole when you go through such a phase, when you go through such a period, right, it just helps you understand yourself better, and like how passionate you are about these things. And that's what's happening now. Like, I know there are jump opportunities, and I know I'll be doing those in future as well. So you just start appreciating these things more.
Right. Very interesting. You speak about, you realize how truly passionate you are about that. So now let's go back to your journey into skydiving and the world of base jumping. So, I mean, you were a telecommunications engineer in Philadelphia, right? And from there, you kind of got a skydiving license and started doing that. So how was the connection from being an engineer to a skydiver? How did that happen?
So engineer was basically a master's in telecom, was basically the usual steps that you go through when you're a student in India. Level one, level two, these are the steps you need to complete, then marriage, then house, then family. And that is how success is defined, right? uh, I was there somewhere on these steps, right? And all these things were planned, but then I reached USA and I went with the mindset that I want to explore more. And it all started in my university. I was in Syracuse University in upstate New York, and the kind of people I met over there, mostly people from the armed forces, because they have a wing where officers from the armed forces come and study over there. A lot of these guys became my friends, and they started training me in physical activities, outdoor survival skills, etc. And one thing led to the other, basically. So when I found a job in Philadelphia, Philly is a super outdoorsy city. There's a river that runs through the city. You can cycle to work. Beautiful weather, beautiful people, outdoor cafe, feeling set up. So slowly, I believe in the power of community also. So I started meeting people who kept introducing me to new activities. So from long distance running, it became cycling. Long distance cycling, it became dragon boat racing in the rivers. And these guys were like world champions, Philadelphian team. From dragon boat racing, I met like some more amazing personalities, and someone suggested, "Hey, have you tried skydiving?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've done the tandem jump in California." They're like, "No, no, no, you can become a solo jumper." I'm like, "I didn't know that. Why didn't they tell me that time? I would have gone for that." But of course, the tandem companies won't tell you that, because that's like their big chunk of business, right? So then I found a school close to Philadelphia, which was like an hour away from where I live. And every weekend I would like start going and jumping, just experimenting, because it's a new medium. Anytime you go into something like this, it's a new medium for you. So your mind is still adjusting to these things. And I've seen students get into the sport, but then they quit because they're like, it's too much for me, too much to handle, too much data to handle. Like, be stable in your body position, deploy on time, be aware of people around you, all these things. But then I started loving it, and it just became a part of me. And then a year or two later, I decided to move back to India, and I had no clue how things are going to pan out. But then I'm like, no, I need to do this move right now. Yeah, and that was in 2011.
11, right. So I'm just wondering, was the obsession with the sky something that was imbibed in you from a young age, or was it something that developed later? Because I think your dad was in the Navy, but was it something that was kind of in your head since a very young age?
Yeah. So my dad was he was in merchant navy. He was a sailor, and this is like back in the 50s and 60s, I think. And like this, the kind of stories he would tell us growing up, he would travel a lot to Japan and different parts of Asia. Uh, and me and my brother would always discuss this, like, man, this guy has like all these crazy stories. Someday we should have our own. Growing up, I was a lot into, I loved science, I loved physics, I loved watching Nat Geo, Discovery, like that was my thing, right? That was my pastime. All my cartoons were also like all these transformation cartoons, like Centurions, Silverhawks. I don't think it's famous in India, but it's one of those American cartoons from the creators of Thundercats. So all these cartoons were like my thing. There was another transformation cartoon called M.A.S.K, not the typical mask wala, but a different, really cool cartoon. And that's what I aspired. So there's a funny story to this actually. When I became a skydiver, a friend of mine, a school friend of mine from Bombay, she messaged me. We have these slam books, right? When you graduate from school, you sign people's books and all that. And in that, there was this question which was pretty absurd now that you look back at it, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I had written skydiver, and I had no clue I had written something like that. She
Wow.
sent me a screenshot of that, or a photograph of that, and like, I still have this. I'm like, holy damn, so probably somewhere in my subconscious mind, all these things were floating, and I'm like, hey, someday I want to get in the skies, like just fly my body basically.
Right. And you did that. So, do you remember your first professional jump? Do you remember it vividly? When and where was that? What year was it? Do you remember it like it was yesterday?
Yeah. Always. You always remember all your jumps, I would say. The first jump was a tandem jump that happened from 18,000 feet in California. And I was supposed to jump in San Francisco, but the weather turned bad. So my sister, like my neighbor, she lived over there, and we couldn't do that jump. So I got a refund, and then I called my junior from engineering college who was living in LA back then. I'm like, hey, are you free? Is the weather nice? He's like, yeah, let's go skydiving. So I took a bus to LA, and we went to Santa Barbara and jumped off like a really cool location that was from 18,000 feet. And that was a really cool jump because you actually need oxygen above 14,000 when you're flying in an open airplane. Once you jump, you let go of the oxygen. So the free fall was like almost a minute for the tandem ride, which is a lot. And yeah, for like both of us really enjoyed it. And that time I didn't know I would go back to this. Of course, they ask you, would you do this again? I'm like, yeah, I would do it again. But then I never thought it would become like a lifestyle.
Right. And your first solo jump after you were like a professional licensed diver. Do you remember that?
Yes. So the awareness comes after, I would say, maybe 25 or 30 jumps, somewhere around then, when you're like completely aware of everything around you, right? Initially, you're just focusing on one or two things like stable body position and deployment. That time, your brain is still getting used to all this rush. I would say it was one of the jumps, probably my 28th or 29th jump in Arizona. So in Arizona, there's a place called Eloy, which has Skydive Arizona, one of the biggest drop zones in the world. It's considered like the mecca of skydiving. And I was one of the last jumpers. It was evening time, and I landed. And then this kid came running to me. He's like, "Yeah," and high five, right? I'm like, wow, like this is cool, because I mean the child made me feel like I'm a superhero or like Iron Man or whatever you want to call. But then this is the power of aero sports, right? Like I see this in India also, because now kids over here, all they see when they see me jump, they're like, oh, PUBG, or whatever games they play. And I've never played these games, but I've seen the videos, and also I realize like, okay, they relate to all this stuff. But then they find it cool, like when someone with a parachute comes and lands in front of.
Right. You mentioned Arizona. I think there were a couple of life-changing experiences for you in your, skydiving world. Arizona, Norway, I think was one. So could you tell us very briefly about that? Why were they so influential in you becoming, or you being where you are right now?
So as I mentioned earlier, 2012, after my skydiving fund money ran out, and then I had to like work and save, and then plan for a bigger trip. In 2016, I did this 2-month trip to California, and there's a place called Lodi in California. Again, it's one of the super cool drop zones, I feel. Many people don't feel that way because it's not regulated under the different skydiving bodies, because they choose not to be regulated. And because of that, it has a bad name, because like sometimes there are accidents, because anyone just shows up without experience, or with experience but they're a bit crazy. And accidents do happen, but then they can happen anywhere. But it's just that this place gets a bad rep. But a lot of legends were born out of that place. um, I met some really cool people over there. I learned a lot over there. I did my wingsuit training over there. Then the next month in November, I flew down to Florida during the same period. I went to Florida. I witnessed the World Wingsuit Championship. There were three other Indian jumpers who had come. One of them lives in USA. One of them is Satyendra Verma from Delhi, and the other one is Udit, also from Delhi. And so got to meet them, interact with them, and meet like people from all over the world. Went back to California, and that's when I met these three guys from Sweden, and one of them I connected really well. Richard was his name, and uh, just like through while talking to people over there, I saw some guys going base jumping. I'm like, hey, can I join you guys and see what you guys are doing? They're like, yeah, sure. So I saw the whole preparation that they did, the mental preparation, and what kind of an attitude do you need to pull off a base jump. And I'm like, I think I can do this, and I think this will change my life in India. I actually had that thought over there because we have the Sahyadris. That time I wasn't thinking of paramotors, paragliders, nothing. I'm like, I have the mountains, and I think I can pull this off. Even buildings, I'm not thinking because there's like the whole legal aspect behind it. And I'm not one of those guys who will just go and like jump off a building just because you want to prove a point. Not right now. So they're like, yeah, I saw the whole process, and I'm like, okay, cool. So Richard said, you can just go to Norway. There are like these beautiful mountains there, 1 kilometer high, where you get a free fall of 15 to 20 seconds, right? And like completely vertical in the fjords. And it's a good transition from sky to base because it's like a mini skydive. The only difference is you're not using skydiving equipment, you're using base jumping equipment, which
Sure.
I'll explain the difference later. In
Hmm.
skydiving, you have two parachutes, here you have one parachute. So you have to be like 1000% into the game, and while packing and all that stuff. So I planned my trip for the next year in 2017, and I had decent money throughout the years because like I was saving, working, saving, working. Um, just 2 weeks before the Norwegian trip, right? Like just today, I chatted with Richard. I'm like, cool, I'm excited. Are you excited? And he was in Italy that day, that whole week. He was shooting for a project over there. Uh, the next day on Facebook, his brother put out a message saying Richard died in a wingsuit base jumping accident in Italy, and that completely shook my world because like the guy who I was supposed to travel with, and someone who had guided me into this whole world, was into the base jumping world, was no longer there. And I'm like, is this the right decision that I'm making? So I took my time. I called my closest friends, and I'm like, hey, this has happened. I'm not sure what to do. And they were all like, hey, knowing you, just do the trip. Don't think about the course right now. Just do the trip, land in Norway, and then we'll figure out. You'll know from there what you want to do. So I have a French sister who used to be my neighbor in Bombay, like 2011 and 12, and she's like, just come here. I'll join you in Norway and Sweden. We'll figure out what to do. So I went with that mindset, and I actually did the base jumping course, and I felt really positive. uh, and then that happened, and yeah, I mean, that completely transformed my life. We went and met Richard's family. Initially I was afraid because I felt over here we may have, like, sometimes I see with people, right, like if you die doing something you love, like whatever extreme sports or whatever it is, people usually, the families usually don't support people with that mindset, right? They're like, no, my son died doing this, I don't want any relation with you guys, right? But then Richard's family was like super supportive, and they're like, we're just happy that our son had made friends with like people from all over the world, and you're such a positive guy in this sport. And that was really cool. So then the next few years, I would always go back to Norway whenever I found the opportunity. This is 2018. 19 and 20, I couldn't go. 20 because of COVID, and 19, there was another incident because of which I couldn't go.
Hmm.
But like I have an open invitation to Norway. The guys are like super nice. The community is beautiful. And then whenever I go there, I go and spend time with Richard's family as well.
Great, awesome. So, where all have you done this outside and within India? Like, if you were to put a number on the number of places you've either done skydiving or base jumping, and which is the best experience out of among them all? Which is the best place, if you could point out?
Okay. I'll answer your second question first. They say who's the best base jumper or skydiver, and the
Mm-hmm.
answer to that is the person having the most fun. So every jump, I would say, is a unique jump. Okay, it's very difficult to compare something. Although I mean, I'll give you some answer to that. But the places I've been to are definitely in USA. I've been in the skies, different states, Pennsylvania, Florida, Arizona, California, Texas, etc. Uh, in uh, uh, in Scandinavia, I've jumped in Norway, in Sweden. In fact, in Sweden, I made it's kind of like an illegal jump off a windmill. So we did that. Then in in India, I've jumped off mountains in Maharashtra, in Himachal Pradesh, and of paramotors. That's like a regular thing now. Of paraglider recently in Sikkim, just few weeks back. And then again in the skies, Dubai, Thailand, South Africa, yeah, all these places. One of the best, most memorable jumps I would say was in Norway. There's this jump where you jump off the mountain and you deploy, and then you actually land on the campsite, and it's one of the most amazing jumps because you just like take a ride, you hike up to the mountain, up to the exit point, and then you come back and land right in front of your tent and just like pack and go in the tent, right?
Right.
It's the last jump of the every day they have this jump because like everyone then just comes back home basically. So in that jump, the weather was a bit foggy, and then the way you calculate fog levels is like there's a guy in a boat down in the fjord. He'll tell you on radio, hey, the fog layer is like 3 seconds, so for 3 seconds you'll be free falling through fog.
Wow.
And it was my first jump like that where I couldn't see what's beneath me. I just could see like a white layer. I have the video to that jump. It's just like white layer. And I was the last guy. Usually when you have a group, you know, you're like, oh, I'll go first because people are motivating you or whatever. But then I chose to be last. I'm like, I just want to go last. But that feeling of being the last person and alone on that cliff and uh, trying to talk to yourself, hey, you can do this. You know, it's just fog. You know what's going to be after that. Just be in the right body position. Uh, that feeling where you're connected with the mountain. It's like the mountain, the wind, the atmosphere, the fog, everything is you. That's like the most pure, the most purest form of any kind of natural connection you can feel, or at least that I felt. And that jump was like one of the most beautiful jumps. Yeah.
So, very interesting. You mentioned all of this that you're kind of falling and you have all these thoughts going on in your mind. So, could you explain just how exactly do you feel when you're falling from the sky, that precise 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 seconds, whatever it is, when you're kind of, in the air? What goes through your mind? What goes through your body? What happens to your body when you are just kind of free falling?
Uh, Again, that's a very deep question. So it all starts from you reaching the top of the mountain, of course considering you've done your pack job and everything correctly. But when you know the spot and you're jumping every day, like for example in Norway, then once you reach to the top, you're observing the winds and everything, the data is good to go, kind of green signal from everywhere. You just quickly check your equipment again. Okay, things are in place, the pilot chute or the first thing that you deploy, everything looks good. uh, your parachute is going to work. So that's the first thing, like, hey, I have packed it correctly, I know it's going to work. Getting that confidence actually takes time, and like the first 5 to 10 jumps you're still like shitting bricks in your pants. Okay, is this going to work? I have packed it and I'm not sure about this, right? But then there's always someone supervising you, and like it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Once you park that thought aside, like just compartmentalize it in your head and keep it on the side. Okay, good to go, it's done, I am not thinking about that anymore. So then your next thing is, okay, what kind of an exit do I want to do? Am I running? Am I with people? Am I by myself? Am I just standing on the edge and jumping off? So just visualizing, it's a lot of visualization. What am I going to do? Where are my hands going to go? Am I going to look down? Am I going to look up? Am I going to look straight? So all these things come into the picture. And that affects your body position also. So visualization is like very important and one of the most important factors into this. Um the point where you jump off, where you like 3, 2, 1, the countdown helps because it just gives you that control. Okay, okay, this is when I go, right? Otherwise you're like abhi jao, abhi jao, abhi jao, that happens. So the countdown helps. Once you go, there's no looking back, right? It's like in philosophical terms, it's like there is no past, there is no future, it's all the present, right? Like what are you going to do now? So then you have to get in the right body position quickly or whatever. If you're doing a low jump, you have to deploy really quick. And once you're flying, and this is why I really love Norway, because once you jump off the mountain, your body like literally flies. If you get it in the right position, and I don't wear any suits, no wingsuit, no other suits to increase my glide ratio. It's just my body. I love that feeling of just moving away from the mountain and gliding in the air. Yeah, that's like the most amazing feeling. And then once your parachute is open, you have all the vihas and the woohoos and all that coming out. It's like going in a roller coaster ride, like woohoo, whatever. Successfully opened, thank God. And then your focus is just make your landing pattern and land safely. That's it. Your jump is complete when you land safely. Yeah.
Sure. Now, you mentioned body positioning quite a few number of times in that. So it has to be very technical as well, right? I'm sure it's not just a case of going and falling off and then hoping that you land safely somewhere. So there involves a lot of technical
Yes.
aspects. There involves a lot of, you know, technique and movements and visualization that you speak about. So could you tell us about the technical aspects of base jumping that are absolutely, you have to master it?
Yeah. So there are quite a few things. Like for example, right now, if you go anywhere in the world to a reputed base jumping course, they will ask for 200 skydives minimum. Sometimes 200, sometimes 250, sometimes even more. Because skydiving gives you number one, awareness to that new environment, to free fall, etc. Number two, getting your body position always correct. Okay. Number three, canopy flying skills, and these are some of the most, these are the basic critical factors in base jumping. So if I take you to a bridge or a building and I make you jump, you will jump. Okay, you will jump and you will probably land and survive. Okay, but the problem is you may not know how to fly a canopy because you've never done it. So skydiving helps you gain that experience. Okay, and especially in base, because now you're landing in smaller areas, in very tighter areas, maybe around trees, buildings, obstacles, boulders, whatever. So skydiving gives you that experience. The other thing is, if you next time go and jump by yourself and say your body position becomes like you go head down or something, the deployment is going to get affected, or you may entangle into the deployment, into the lines, or the parachute, and that may kill you, or you may be in a bad accident. And this is why when someone asks me, hey, can a new person just come and jump, I'm like, anyone can jump, but like you have to go through this training route. And it's very important, like no matter what kind of an athlete you are, if you're trying to skip this and just go and do jumps, you may probably survive 5 to 10, 15, whatever jumps, but then someday there will be a problem where you don't have the awareness yet. Oh, what do I do now? Say my canopy has opened the other way around, what do I do now? These are the skills that you gain as you, the more you train and the more safer you get, the more you talk to people, the more you jump with people, that's what you learn.
Sure. And just a quick follow-up on that. What would be the biggest difference between skydiving and base jumping? You say you require a certain number of jumps to become a base jumper. So what is the difference in principle?
So, so in skydiving, there are different courses how you can start. There is static line course, there is accelerated free fall, whatever, right? Now there are also wind tunnel simulators. So they help you get in the right body position without you thinking of dying, since you are inside like an enclosed chamber where just wind is blowing, right? Skydiving has evolved over the years and been super, super duper safe right now. Like you have two parachutes, you have one main canopy, you have a reserve canopy, you have a device called as an automatic activation device, which works on calculating barometric pressure. It's like a computer, tiny computer, calculates barometric pressure and your speed, the velocity at which you're falling. If it sees that you need to set it first. If you if it notices that you're still falling super fast at a particular height, it senses danger, it releases the reserve parachute. The reserve parachute is spring loaded, so the deployment, you don't have to do anything, it just like poof, fires automatically. So the cool thing is, now even if you are knocked unconscious during a jump, say you hit your head onto the plane or some bang into someone or whatever, right, your parachute will still deploy. And this has happened, there are tons of stories on this. So it's like super safe, unless you like have a really terrible accident or whatever, canopy entanglement and all that.
Sure.
Sometimes accidents happen during landing where you come in super fast, or you do a wrong turn during landing. So you need to avoid all these things. Base jumping has also evolved over the years because they started off with skydiving equipment, but they realized like you don't have enough time to deploy a reserve. So what's the use? So then they modified the containers, the backpacks in such a way that there is only one parachute. Initially, they had Velcro backpacks. Then they changed that to pin-based backpacks, which is much more safer because the deployment is a step-by-step process.
Right.
Like the pilot chute goes first, then the bridle, the line that connects the pilot chute to the canopy extends, the pins move out first, the container flaps open, then the parachute extracts, then the parachute fills with air, then the brake lines open at the last because you don't want them to open first, otherwise they'll entangle into this. So it's like it's a beautiful step by step, and they've done this like over years and just observing a lot of videos, doing a lot of dummy tests. It's amazing. Like the canopy I use has vents underneath it because say it's a ram air canopy, which means it's taking air from the front, like your paragliders also. But it's also taking air from the bottom of it. So say I have a building strike or a mountain strike, the canopy is still flying. It doesn't like collapse suddenly because the front areas are closed now. So like there's so much advancement in the sport.
Wow. So technically, I mean, relatively, both of them are safer than you saying what they were before they've advanced in terms of technology and everything.
Every day they're getting safer. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Cool. So the final few questions, you've touched upon this. You said you came back to India for a few years. You didn't know, how you would take this forward. Now in a country like
Yeah.
India where this isn't kind of, still caught on with the normal masses, how do you keep your passion going for something like this, something as extreme as this, living in a country like India where it isn't that big a thing yet. So how do you keep that going?
Okay. So one thing is I have realized what my experience is,
Mm-hmm.
and what kind of jumps I would prefer to do. Right. Like as I said, I love going to Norway because I find it much more safer. The mountains like super high. I get that whole feeling of flying, and even the community is like beautiful. In India, my whole thing around base has been just creating projects like adventure projects in few months. So if I have seen a cliff and I'm like, this seems jumpable, I'll get all the data around it and plan it. There's no rush for me. Okay, I want to do it just today or tomorrow or over the weekend. Let it take its time because it's the whole process of planning and executing it successfully. That is where the pleasure lies for me. So I mean, there are like some amazingly tall buildings right in front where I live in Malad, but then I wouldn't go and jump those because I know number one, someone's gonna be like, "Hey, terrorist attack." Number two, "Hey, suicide." Number three, police are gonna call me. Number four, I have a beard and an Arabic name, and yeah, then everything is gone, right? So the idea is to definitely, and also now because I have a knack for creating content around this, I pitch a lot of ideas to brands, to content portals, like, hey, there's a story behind this spot over here or whatever, or just exploration. And then sometimes they come on board, sometimes they don't, but that's okay. I still go and execute these jumps. So that's my whole thing.
Right. And you've said that it's tough to explain this, why do you do this to people who actually haven't done it. But could you give it a shot here? What is so appealing about this that you literally want to put your life at risk, and that's literally to experience this?
I was just thinking about this question the other day when I read someone commenting on an accident in aerial adventure sports. Like, why do these people do it? But then the question is, why do we do anything, right? Like, why do we climb a mountain? Why do we ride? Why do we drive? Why do we, whatever thing you enjoy, why do we do it, right? And because we are humans, in the end, we try to find our own way, try to, in this process, you are getting to know more about yourself, you're getting to explore. And I understand it's not for everyone, right? Like everyone would not relate to this. Some people prefer meditating, some people just prefer praying, whatever they are into. Some people just enjoy partying and all that. But for everyone, they have their own likings. and I find pleasure doing this. I find as I said, there's a beautiful community I've found through the sport, and the places I see, the experiences I live are just mind blowing. Something I would have never imagined in my soon to be 39 years of existence.
Right. And just finally on that, you said soon to be 39. How long do you plan to keep doing this? Is there a limit age-wise, body-wise? Is there a limit to this where one fine day you're like, okay, no, that's it?
There are limits,
Mhm.
but you know that because through my travels, I have met old base jumpers, like 60, 70-year-old base jumpers. And I was really inspired by them. And something they told me, hey, if you want to do this, till you're old, just use a big parachute. And that's what I've been doing all this while. I use a slightly bigger parachute for my body size, and it just keeps your legs and knees intact.
Right. So you plan to do this till you're old,
Hopefully.
hopefully, with a bigger parachute.
Yeah, like genetically, I think I have a lot of time because my mom's father was 107. My mom's mom was 99. And
Wow.
on my parents' side, both were like 88. So average is still around 90, right? So yeah, I have a lot of time.
So you have a lot of time left, a lot of places to explore still.
Like a lot of content, a lot of content.
Right. Great, Sajid. It's been wonderful talking to you, learning about the art of base jumping. Learning why you do this and experience a whole new different world that most of us aren't, kind of used to. So thanks so much for that. Wonderful chatting with you. Good luck with your Telangana jump and stay safe and keep jumping.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, man. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. All right.